Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited to host this session regarding our marketplace and an open API first approach. We have a ton of awesome content to cover today, but I just wanted to kick off with a few kind of housekeeping items. So first of all, for the agenda, we are going to cover, first of all, challenges and market trends that we've been seeing. After that, we'll go into a quick introduction and overview of BridgeFT's Wealthtech API platform. After that, we'll go into more detail around what the API marketplace is itself and how easy it is to get started with it. We'll cover the power of open APIs and how they can be applicable to a variety of different types of businesses. After that, we'll do sort of a deep dive on market data and the power of that with Intrinio. Then we'll turn it over to Yadi to cover AI-powered personalization via APIs. And then super excited that we do have a good amount of time today for a live question and answer. So I definitely wanted to encourage everyone to submit their questions as we go along in the presentation. You can use that questions tool on the right side panel in your GoToWebinar platform, and just go ahead and submit those as we go through the presentation. Then we'll circle back to all those questions at the end of the session for that dedicated live Q&A. And I also just wanted to let everyone know that this session is being recorded and you will receive a copy of it directly to your inbox following the session. So I definitely want to kick off by having our panelists introduce themselves. So Rachel, would you do the honors?
Absolutely, Carolyn, thank you. Great to be here. This is a fun group of people. We all work together in a variety of ways, so I'm sure the discussion is going to be great. I am the founder and CEO of Intrinio, one of the newer partners with BridgeFT into the Wealthtech API marketplace. Very excited about the integration and what it's going to do for all of our mutual customers. So excited to chat about that today.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, we're super excited to have you. Raj, do you want to tell the group a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm the founder and the CEO of Yadi, and we have been deeply involved, developing a wealth personalization platform, and we'll talk about it more later.
Great, thanks, Raj. And Eric, do you want to tell the group a little bit about your background and your role at Bridge?
Sure. I'm Eric Siegfried, and I'm responsible for the overall API strategy here at Bridge. I work closely with sales and our customers, bringing a lot of their requests and understanding what they're trying to build. And I work closely with the product and engineering team to inform our roadmap and take us to the overall strategy for the API in the marketplace.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. And Dave, could you give an intro to the group?
Yep. Thanks, Carolyn, and good afternoon, and I guess morning for some. Thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Dave Hagan. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here for BridgeFT. I oversee sales, marketing, and our client success teams.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. All right, so we have a ton of awesome content to get through today. So let's go ahead and kick it off, sort of talking through some of the current dynamics that you're seeing in the market. Dave, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, I'll go through this quickly, and like Carolyn said, we have lots of content to go over, but really excited about today's webinar. Obviously it's early in 2024, and lots of talk about sort of big things going on as we head into the new year. Across the industry, lots of acceleration happening in our space, as we're all aware of, and really sort of the move, and we'll talk a lot about this today, towards an as-a-service model and what that means in support of rapid development and really providing greater control over the experiences you provide to your customers, whether that's an advisor or client experience. And really what we're seeing is sort of the days of all-in-ones or custom builds is really starting to be behind us. And if you look at sort of correlated industries like e-commerce, where tech providers like Shopify and Stripe and others have really transformed that industry by offering sort of critical data, applications, infrastructure to help online retailers, really of all sizes, compete with the big boys, and having to do that without having to build everything from scratch. And at BridgeFT, our focus is really to do the same for wealth management technology, and we've been really lucky enough to find other innovative technology partners like Yadi and Intrinio that have similar market outlooks, and take a similar API first approach to offering differentiated technology. So we're seeing 2 to 3 sort of primary drivers that are driving sort of innovation across wealth management. One, the lines very much are being blurred between siloed and point applications, and not necessarily supporting the modern workflow of today's advisors, and even the expectations of investors. So that's sort of one one big driver we're seeing in the marketplace and clients coming to us. The other one is more and more we're seeing wealth management firms and even tech providers wanting to be able to control their own data and want to have greater control over those digital experiences and what they offer advisors and even clients alike. And those have been sort of primary drivers that we're seeing in the marketplace. And Carolyn, if you go to the next slide, as you start to think about the evolution and sort of the technology experiences that firms want to offer, a lot of the core sort of underlying infrastructure comes with lots of expenses and lots of time and labor, to be able to put all those pieces together. And at the end of the day, they may not necessarily be the differentiator that you're looking for. We're providing, sort of core capabilities, and to this point, being able to deliver those custom experiences has only been limited to the largest of firms and even the largest of tech providers. So, but now, we're seeing, ever expanding and making available ever expanding, modern API first capabilities that are starting to level the playing field, allowing them to build applications without having to take on all the overhead that comes along with it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that segues really well into kind of an overview of the Wealthtech API itself.
Yeah, and we'll talk deeper about sort of the API sort of approach and what that means. But for folks that don't know us, we're a wealth infrastructure software company. We power lots of unique sort of differentiated experiences in financial institutions and fintechs and advisors. And our commitment really is to provide modern, cloud native, and completely API first capabilities across a number of functional areas that really allow for next generation development of applications. Our wealth, we offer a Wealthtech as a service platform, which is sort of interconnected set of capabilities, including our marketplace. We call it our Wealthtech API. It's really a single integration API connection to a host of critical services. So things like trade and analytics ready, multi-custodial data aggregation, advanced analytics and insights, headless application services that all can be embedded in those experiences. And our aim really, and the aim of our marketplace, which we'll talk about, is to be a true enabler and an accelerator of, to bring those new ideas to life much faster and really much cheaper than traditionally has been available in the marketplace.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for going through that, Dave. Really appreciate it. And do you want to just speak a little bit on the concept of the marketplace and sort of some of the key benefits we see for that for users?
I do, and I'll talk about it at a high level, and we'll get into sort of the functional areas and really some of the use cases tied to that. But last year we launched our API marketplace, really based on client feedback and demand that we were hearing in the marketplace around more technology services that were either pre-integrated or that leveraged our data infrastructure right out of the box, to really speed up some of the use cases. And as part of that, we've developed a curated list of partners, and Trinio and Yachty being two of the first that offer similar API first technology that does truly accelerate app development, so our clients can focus on on their growth. And we'll talk a lot about sort of some of the use cases tied to that API first approach, and really how things like market data, financial data, wealth personalization sort of play into what we're hearing from clients as they're thinking about that overall experience for for advisors and even downstream to clients and investors.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, I think this is the perfect point for us to talk a little bit more about open APIs themselves. Eric, did you want to lead the conversation around that?
Yeah, I can expand a bit on what Dave just outlined. And just to sort of set the table here. When you think about building any kind of a Wealthtech application, one of the foundational elements you need is obviously the data, right? And so once upon a time, you go out to custodians yourself, get data from Schwab, do your first implementation, which you really want to be focusing more on building the features and functions, but you end up taking on a big burden and bringing the data in, normalizing it, dealing with all the operational overhead. Then you get your next custodian, right? Let's say it was Fidelity, right? And this becomes a sort of this wash, rinse, repeat process. But you start to, end up building this beast of a system where it's mostly about, the data, the management overhead, and it really takes away from being able to develop out the features, right, for your product. A more modern way is, going out and getting aggregated data from a source. Ultimately, at some point, you'll need market data. Now you've got to go get market data, right? So by having an API first strategy where we've gone out and we've curated the data, we take it through a normalization process and make it available on a single API. You can get all the custodian data from one API, you do one integration, and as each custodian becomes available, you don't have to go through a brand new implementation. You really get to focus on building the features and the functions for your advisors and your end users. This sort of ties into our marketplace where at a base, if we're offering your typical balances, positions, lots, UGL, RGL, the next logical thing from there, you'd want to be adding billing services, portfolio reporting services, general reporting services, right? And then you might be doing, depending on your application, the tax aware services, tax loss harvesting, portfolio rebalancing, right? You could build all this yourself, but that's a lot to take on, right? Or you can go out and try to find outside vendors. Right? Again, more integration, right? The marketplace allows us to offer billing, reporting, and as Dave mentioned, working with curated list of partners like Intrenio or Yachty, you can take advantage of using their services all through a single platform, with Bridge. And of course, you can use their APIs independently. But one of the advantages of using it through the marketplace is we pre-integrate and work closely with our providers. For example, if in your application, a classic example that we see is clients make a positions call. They might make a market data call to reprice those positions with an intraday quote. Those are two different calls you have to make, orchestrate that, put that all back together, right? Or you can just make a single API call for your positions off of Bridge. Behind the scene, we integrate with Intrenio. We'll do that repricing. So you make a single call and you get all of that work done for you. And then you can just get right back to building your application. Very similar with portfolio rebalancing. Karen, what's the next slide?
We're going to transition into the with Intrenio. Was there anything that you wanted to add before we kind of delve into the details on Intrenio's offering?
No, I think just one more I'll touch on the market data side is, the marketplace is meant to be sort of bring your own license. So for example, you could, go to Intrenio, contract with Intrenio, get your API key, but you can use those API keys directly through the Bridge API, and you can still, enjoy the use of Intrenio's APIs directly or through Bridge using, they've got fantastic documentation. Their interface is super clean. None of that changes. So you can use that exact same, request response interface and all the documentation, but you have the advantage of making one single gateway call through Bridge. So you don't have to, learn new interfaces. So that's a huge advantage. And that's a general pattern you'll see with all the marketplace providers.
Right. No, I think that's really important to emphasize. Thanks so much, Eric. Really appreciate that. And super excited to turn things over to Rachel to kind of go over Intrenio's offering and how it plugs into the marketplace. Take it away, Rachel.
Absolutely. Thanks. Great start, Eric. Thanks for the comments on our documentation. We take a lot of pride in that. We have a lot of developers behind the scenes making things easy. So Intrenio is a market data company, right? We're working on making data, capital markets data, a lot easier. The reason that we're tackling this space is because the market data world is pretty broken. For any of you who are listening that have ever had to license or contract market data in a traditional way, you're probably familiar with a lot of these issues. First of all, market data is expensive, right? Whether it's coming from exchanges or the SEC or wherever you're getting it, Morningstar. It's expensive, right? And in this age where we're seeing a lot more personalization, customization, wealth tech apps popping up, you're most likely going to be redistributing market data, and redistribution fees for market data can, get into the 7 to 8 figures at times, which is completely prohibitive and really stifles innovation. The contracts that they make you sign typically are ridiculously disgusting and long and trap you. And it's just a mess for people that want to get access to this type of data. And also a point that's been touched on quite a bit, there's just too many vendors to work with, right? It's highly unlikely if you're trying to find something affordable that you're going to get all the data you need from one place, which is really part of the problem that the API marketplace is working to solve. But as a smaller, innovative wealth tech platform, you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of people, and managing all these vendors, managing 10 different APIs, 10 different integrations, 10 different contracts and renewals and licensing, it really can bog you down. And on top of that, there's really a lack of developer tools out there. You know, we're sitting in the convergence of two major trends right now. There's this pressure to personalize, there's this pressure for wealth tech companies to build their own tools and build their own software and build their own apps to differentiate themselves. That's changing. At the same time, there's also this demand for data. You're seeing advisors get more involved in the process, want to dig into the data. You're seeing even the sophistication of the end user base increase to the point where clients want to see data. They want to know what their holdings are. They want to understand the construction of their portfolios. And so there's this customization and building happening with this demand for data at the same time, which means that instead of buying these prepackaged wealth platforms and trying to shove different softwares in, you're building your own stuff, which means you're a developer and you've got to have developer tools. But far too many of the traditional market data vendors don't do developer tools well. So what I've just described is a big mess, right? It's not great. It's not been easy for people to get access to this data, and it really prohibits innovation. So that's one of the problems we're trying to solve. Yeah, so we're doing things a lot differently. We're painting a different picture than what I just described to you. At Intrinio, we make access to these data super affordable, super easy, and even more affordable and easy now that it's coming straight through the API marketplace platform. So we give a la carte access. If you just need stock prices, that's all you need. If you just need holdings, that's all you need. That's all you pay for. So we've got coverage of some core asset classes that I think are pretty critical for the wealth tech space: equities, options, ETFs, mutual funds, kind of any flavor of data that you would want. And as we've mentioned, a great API, developer tools, resources, support. And all of this is actually built by developers. I'm a former developer. It's been a long time since I was in the code base, but most people on our team have a background in that, which means everything we do is very developer centric. So to kind of wrap that point up, our mission is to use data to power a new generation of fintech innovation. That includes wealth tech, right? We sell data to a variety of clients, but the trend in wealth tech applications that we've seen coming through the door looking for data is definitely upward. It's a space that's seeing a lot of innovation, so we're excited to be plugging in there. So lastly here, the power of pre-integrated market data, right? APIs, as we've mentioned, we're all big fans. They're just so much easier to work with than traditional methods. Leveraging the Intrinio data through the marketplace, you can integrate it into an application, a website, a widget, an algorithm, any type of financial tool that you're building. And so let's talk for just a minute about what this means for the actual end users that are working with this platform, right? Less technical resources, less technical debt, a single integration for you to manage. This all means you're just saving a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, and just as Dave and Eric were saying, that gets you back to focus on building rather than messing with the rest of this stuff. Because at the end of the day, you can't become a data company inside of your company, right? It's not sustainable and doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, that's why we're particularly excited about being part of this platform. Anything we can do to make things easier, remove friction, and just keep things simple for the end users that need access to this data, that means we're just going to see a lot more innovation, and that's what we're all about. So that's about it for me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. Really appreciate you going through that. And just a reminder to everyone that we are taking questions, so go ahead and submit those into the tool. I've already seen a couple come over, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. So thank you. Super excited to turn things over to Raj to talk a little bit more about Yayati and how they're helping with personalization.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. And I think you already heard a pretty good story from Rachel, Eric, and Dave that why do you need an API marketplace and how it solves the problem. So you think about when you're trying to build your own wealth stack, what would you need? You would need data like client data, custodial data, market data. So we already, Eric, Rachel, they covered already that part. Now downstream, what you need to do is to build like, let's say you have to manage your portfolios, you have portfolio management system. Now there is a trend to go to direct indexing. You're going to a different vendor. For risk, you're going to a different vendor. then you are trying to, basically the same point that Rachel was making, that there's just too many vendors. How are you going to manage? What are you going to get out of it? The methodology, like, risk gives you a number, then you're constructing a portfolio. Is it very consistent? Unless you're using like BlackRock model or something, which many people make those changes, whether how consistent it is going to become. It's very, very hard that how many things you're going to manage. And you get alpha by doing that. That's the question. The big part is that you get any alpha by doing that. You save cost. You end up having a large team, which is a developers team, or large team, which is a quant. You want to manage all that headache, and we can get all this pre-packaged. So what we talk about here in this slide is the enterprise wealth tech challenge. So what happens is that this is like a Franklin stack, the diagram that you're trying to do the planning, you're trying to do the CRM, you're trying to do this, all that stuff. And we know that some of these niche vendors do not work together. Time sync is bad. Now there is a trend basically that how do you, if you're trying to build more, we focus mostly on the hyper personalization of the portfolio from IATI side. So what we do, because the data comes, we are already integrated with Intrinio, we are already integrated with the Bridge FT, and we are using it actively. So not only that I'm their partner, but as a client also I'm advocating that how easy it becomes your life. So we are building the downstream. So what we mean by the hyper personalization, it's basically that when the hyper personalization could mean you are aware of the goal, you're aware of the risk, you're aware of the taxes, you are aware of the time horizon of the clients, you are aware like can you package all these things together? Do you want different application like direct indexing, risk, and all those things to plug in together? It's very hard. We do all that job very easily. It can work with the vendor systems, meaning if you're using already model, it can work with your systems to put all these things together. So we build the portfolios with your help, and you have already built the portfolio. What we are taking the revolution towards, every client could be a model. So that's very important. Like, that's how you get the hyper personalization level. But the problem is not that this is a new news. This is not a new news. This is something old, but doing it was very hard because the layer of the customizations are not in one place. There are too many different places. At EART, we have put up all these layers at one place. So as you get the data, custodial data, market data, you can build your entire layer, investment layer, to make yourself unique, distinct, and differentiated from the rest of the players. And that's where we are trying to get you to avoid this Frankenstein. Moving to the next slide. So this is how we see that, in our, this is more like a general approach, like, what IATI API solution would do. So in terms of like, if you're building with us, like, you have the UI control, you can have all-in-one platform that Dave mentioned, like, have the all-in-one platform. You do not have any UI control. Then you have niche vendors. Maybe it's the best, but doesn't work because you want to drive the experience of your customers through your philosophy, through your ideas, and you're trying to create like white labeling of too many vendors. That's not going to work out very well. So we provide you that flexibility. Best in class functionality. Yeah, the team is like all developers and all quants, and quants who have been developers. So we would provide you, work with your team to provide all kinds of parameters that is available, and we can work and customize with you. Cost is going to be, because we put a lot of things together, so you don't have to worry about the cost, because what we have seen, the companies are buying this vendor, that vendor, integration, and the cost starts piling up over time. It becomes a very huge cost. So you're not controlling your experience, you're not controlling, over time the cost becomes humongous. Integration time, I don't want to harp on the same point. We are already integrated with the data sources in this marketplace. Ease of access, like, depending upon your use cases, we are developing a lot of documents to help you and support you in terms of the documents. Flexibility, process consistency. Flexibility meaning that we have a lot of parameters that you can think of, meaning we are trying to put the whole portfolio management system, which is building, executing the trades, and reporting on the trades, all in one box very easily. It can work very easily with many systems. The process consistency point is unique in a sense that if you have a risk system coming from somebody else, planning somebody coming from it, how do you integrate those systems? It gets much harder for you. So we try to make that process consistent, that your portfolio construction, your methods or whatever, you provide us parameters, you tell us, we would be able to do it. You don't need a large quant team. You don't need a lot of management around the quant team and the development team to maintain these applications around portfolio management systems. We are also developing AI Copilot that will take the reporting level to the next level. It's not fully baked, but hopefully it will be ready in some time. So quickly moving to the next slide, I won't cover this much. It seems like it's hard to read, but I think what we are trying to highlight here is that we have a lot of solutions at the right place. My apologies, these slides are very not displaying really well because very small. But to tell you the point that you could have the front office functions, you could have middle office of the function, you have the back office of the functions, and you can source a lot of these components through AIT. And we provide like a lot of microservices. So we have number of products, and we are like API first kind of an infrastructure. We think it would be highly applicable for especially very large shops who are trying to create their wealth tech infrastructure. It would be highly applicable rather than building everything by themselves. They can source it, and we can help them to source a lot of these things. And so you pay for what you use. Thanks, Caroline. That's all.
Thanks, Raj. Really appreciate it. Cool. Thank you so much for going through that. And super excited to get to the question and answer portion. I have a couple questions here to kind of get us kicked off right off the bat. And I encourage everyone obviously to submit their additional questions now using the tool. So first one here. What strategies do you recommend for legacy financial institutions looking to transition to like an open API first approach in their Wealthtech offerings? That's a great question and super pertinent. Rachel, I'd love to kind of get your initial thoughts on that, and then maybe we can bounce around through the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I'm actually on the infrastructure side I think Eric and Dave might have some good thoughts on, the side, like bigger clients, like bigger wealth tech institutions face different challenges when they're moving to this model from a technical perspective. And I'm curious to see their perspective on any clients that Bridge FT has seen gone through that transition on the bigger side. But I have a bit of a interesting take on this one, and my answer is actually culture. I think when you're making a switch that big to an open API model, a lot changes, but you're going to meet resistance to that change across the team if you haven't prepared culturally for it. I always like to say, I actually wrote an article on this, that big institutions, they're not lacking technology, they're lacking culture. And that's part of the reason they're not innovating, is they're too afraid to try new things, too afraid to fail, really stuck in the kind of this is the way we've always done things mentality. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that traditional large wealth platforms face when they're trying to innovate and use modern tools. I mean, there's this just like utopia waiting on the other side of gains you can make from moving to an API first approach, but you can come up with every excuse in the book just to continue doing things the way you always have. And so getting over that kind of mental and cultural hurdle, if you're thinking of making a switch, is something to consider first, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rachel. Dave, Eric, like any additional thoughts? Maybe Dave, you could speak to some client situations you've seen, or?
Yeah, I'll add some thoughts, and I know Eric may have some as well. And I think Rachel, the point about the culture is a one for sure. And where does the strategy use it, and how does that come about? I think the other one is, from a strategy and overall perspective, you don't necessarily have to bite the complete project all at once. So we're working with a lot of clients right now who are taking very specific use cases or very specific scenarios that they're trying to solve for, particularly as they're thinking about the evolution of their their experiences, and whether that's building a client portal that's more interactive and representative of the relationship, or whether that's more insights and analytics across a network of advisors that you may be overseeing. It's started, and we get a lot of this is, start in small chunks, prove out the use case, and then you can start to bite off more as you go. And then if you're thinking about, sort of the end state, and it could take you a while to get there, being able to do that in a more phased approach, leveraging specific API instances or endpoints that can solve it, and maybe even to Raj's point of, the building blocks tied to things like portfolio construction, optimization, tax performance that could set some level of differentiation for you. That's what we're hearing from clients. is how can I get started without trying to redo my entire tech stack all at once.
Great. Another question I had come in here, and Eric, I think you kind of touched on this briefly during your portion, but this person asked, if I have an Intrinio license already, can I access Intrinio's APIs on their own in addition to accessing them through Bridge?
Right. Yeah, I touched on that a little bit, but so the answer is absolutely, right? The idea is you actually might already have something built with Intrinio, right? But now you want to take advantage of the pre-integrated, with your positions or some of the custodial data. You can take that same API key, pass it through the Bridge API, with some additional flags, positions, repriced, and you'll get back those repriced positions, as I mentioned. But it's using your existing Intrinio license, so you can really have the best of both worlds.
Oh, awesome! Thanks for clarifying that. Another kind of interesting one on the data side. This says, what kinds of data do you see the majority of Wealthtech companies leveraging in their platforms? Like, what's most popular? This person asks. Who wants to? Rachel, you want to start us on that one as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, right. Like, obviously, custodial data is a whole different ballgame, but I can answer on behalf of the market data side. Yeah, I mean, to my earlier point, right, this customization, like this curiosity and desire to actually understand your own investments is becoming an increasingly a trend, right? I mean, whether or not we thank the whole GameStop situation for the rise of retail investors or people getting curious, everybody all of a sudden became a trader during COVID, right? I mean, all of these things are kind of culminating into this level of curiosity where clients want to see more data. They want to see what's happening with their portfolios and their investments, and they have more of a desire to, perhaps check in on the stock price of individual holdings within their portfolio. And so we obviously sell a ton of ETF and mutual fund data to Wealthtech platforms. That's a huge core component of it. But what's been interesting is we've been seeing this increasing trend in wanting to see underlying fundamentals, underlying stock prices, data on underlying securities and portfolios. We historically hadn't seen that level of detail being pulled forward, but stock charts, stock tickers updating, any type of information like that you're displaying in front of clients inside of these apps can really increase engagement and help differentiate you. So I think a lot of Wealthtech founders are starting to notice that. So yeah, definitely just more individual security underlying price and fundamental information, and even a little bit of options data for some of the more unique platforms, because that's been rising in popularity too. So at least on the market data side, that's what we're seeing.
I'll add to that, because I think we're very much, particularly in the RIA space, living in a multi-custodial or multi-custodian world. So, and from an advisor perspective, or even at a firm level, providing more choice of where those assets reside and how those assets, ultimately start to provide a more broader sort of total wealth picture. So whether those assets sit at Schwab or Fidelity, or they sit, directly at one of the mutual fund or ETF providers, being able to provide, regardless of what the interface is, but being able to provide a consolidated view for that, that feeds downstream systems, right? So, in the Yachty world, how does that feed into, real client, portfolio recommendations and personalization? How does that feed into what clients and advisors are seeing in a collaborative way? To me, that's, we're hearing lots of discussions around, how do I own my own data? And what does that actually mean to own your data? But also, because it lives in so many different areas, how do you bring that together? One big value for us is not only from a technology perspective of how to deliver that data, but delivering it in sort of a single data model. So as a user or as a consumer of that data, you don't necessarily have to know the difference between what a Schwab data file looks like, or a Fidelity data file, or American funds, or others who are all providing sort of different layers of data. We take some of that burden off of a lot of our clients, by normalizing it and making it, all look the same from a consumable perspective.
Cool. Thanks so much for going through that. Yeah, so it looks like we knocked out all the questions for today. I did want to let everyone know that when I send out the presentation deck, if you have other questions or things you didn't get to ask, just go ahead and respond to that. It'll go directly to me, and I can get you connected to the right subject matter expert to answer like any additional questions that you might have. And then I just wanted to make sure I point everyone to our website here, bridgeft.com/wealthtech-API-marketplace. You can also just go to our website and there's a tab at the top that says marketplace, and you'll have a deep dive on a lot of the things that we covered today. And I wanted to say thank you so much to Rachel Ventrinio and Raj with Yayati for joining us today. And thank you for everyone for attending, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Having us.
Thanks.
Everybody, take care. Thank you.
Bye.